welcome back to another episode of the Five Tool Baseball Podcast. I am Dustin McComas, joined once again by Drew Bishop. And if you missed episode 20, we went through some of the signing classes in the state of Texas at the D1 level. We went through Baylor and Texas and TCU and Texas A&M and Texas Tech. So if you missed that, go to Podbean, go to Apple Podcasts, go to our Instagram pages, our Twitter pages. We make it really easy for you to find us if you want to tune in. So some good stuff about those signing classes. And we're going to continue that theme today, going through a bunch more of the D1 programs in the state of Texas. A longer list today. We'll probably get through these a little bit quicker. And part of the reason why, Drew, when you went through and did the research, some of these classes are super small, but I think that we're probably still seeing some of the effects of the COVID roster, not limits, but just the way the roster rules changed to allow those guys to have an option to return to school. It's just, we saw so many more guys come back to school last year with the rosters expanding to kind of make way for that. And I think you're seeing it with some of these recruiting classes, and that some of the numbers are really, really small, but that's probably because they just don't have the space right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting when you look through the numbers of the classes and how people decide to recruit and where they recruit and what levels they recruit from. It's definitely interesting, but I think you're right. I think there's a COVID hangover on the roster. And we're just going to see it's going to play out over a couple of years. But, like we've talked about and Mitch Thompson talked about, it should help benefit the junior colleges.
Yeah.
Just because of the amount of kids that are going to be available. You look at a couple of classes like a UTA that has 3 kids. I think it was Lamar had 1 kid. It just that has to be playing some effect in it. And at the same time, I think, there's some schools that decide to wait and watch some guys play in the spring at some junior colleges and, see how some guys develop that don't get picked up in that first round. But, like we've talked about, lots of really good baseball in Texas, and there's a lot of Division I programs. I mean, just as we rattle off the list, you'll see how many they are. And it's really interesting to see some patterns and how and where they recruit. Yeah,
for sure. And you mentioned the junior college level. This is when they can really capitalize. And we've seen that. We've seen that this week. Renee Galvin from Sinton makes his commitment. Tanner Shillette made a commitment recently. Just last night, Lance Cantrell, a guy that I liked, plays first base for that Hunter Pence team from Tomball Memorial. He makes his commitment to Temple College. Isaac Goddard, a guy from the Kansas Southwest program, commits to McLennan. He's one of those guys that up to 91 can really spin it. There are good players out there. And right now, I think is when a lot of those junior college programs are really capitalizing on those guys that are probably D1 good, but for whatever reason, maybe they just want to go the JUCO route, bet on themselves, see what happens with transfer draft or whatever, or there just might not be the space, across a lot of these D1 programs in the region for reasons like you said, like the COVID hangover is still impacting these rosters, which it's kind of funny to see some of these commitment lists. And then you look at Texas Tech and Texas A&M, and it's like, you better get a calculator out to figure out how many commitments and signees that they have. But it just goes to show you that the numbers, especially with COVID and really every year, every cycle, they can be dramatically different from one program to the next, just based on who's there, who's leaving, who's graduating, if there's a coaching change, any of that sort of stuff. But yeah, as we go through this list, I think it'll remind people that there's a lot of really, really good baseball played in the state of Texas because it's a long list of D1 programs.
Yeah, well, and one last thing before we start getting to the teams, another thing and a strategy that I'd imagine some of these schools are using is they see that many kids going to A&M, to Tech, and other places that are in a similar spot, and they know some of those guys are going to have to leave. Just mathematically, there's no way they can't. So they may be sitting back and hoping to catch some of the kickbacks from some of the bigger schools, some guys that are maybe some higher profile guys or guys that they're going to have to clear the roster with to make room for some of these big classes. So, there's going to be a lot of that out there, and the portal is going to make some of these places an easier destination. You don't have to wait for them to go to a junior college to come back to you. So that may be a strategy that some of these schools are using.
Yeah, the more I go through these exercises and learn about the players and the classes and stuff like that, the more I think that the JUCO guys got the right strategy. Like, we'll really evaluate you and we can wait, and then we'll just kind of pluck those guys that are just sitting there. And you wonder why you go watch a Texas versus the McLennan or a San Jacinto against the Dodger scout team, and you're looking at some of these players and it's like, how did these guys get through all of these cracks with all these major D1 programs, and they're just going to either the draft or a major D1 program? And this is part of the reason why, is that these JUCO programs are able to kind of sit back. They're able to really evaluate guys. They're able to see these kids as their bodies mature, and there's, they have a good idea of the projection and the skill, the talent and things like that. And they're able to capitalize. And that's one of the reasons why the D1 baseball in Texas is really good. The junior college baseball in Texas is really, really good. And those guys, while some of these D1 programs are taking commitments from 2024s and 2025s, the JUCO guys get to go one class at a time and just capitalize on those rising seniors and build their classes that way. But we'll go through all the rest of the D1 programs in the state of Texas today. We're going to start with Abilene Christian. I think that this recruiting staff, I really think that they're one of the best in the state of Texas. When you look at the kind of players they get, they're not a major Power 5 program, but you look at some of these guys and there's on this list. Like, I saw Parker Matthews this fall down at Premier. Big projectable righty. I think might be 6'6", maybe even 6'7". Lanky. He's going to add some weight to that frame. There's still some physical projection left. He's up to 90 miles an hour. The arm worked quick, especially relative to his size. Sometimes those young guys that are really tall and long like that, you kind of wonder how it all works together. It worked. And that's a guy that's like, man, that guy's got a lot of upside. Maddox Misi, a guy that killed the ball this summer. I was at one event down at Premier in the summer, and he hit 3 homers during a tournament there. Holden Rook, a guy that plays for that Hunter Pence program, can really, really run. Blaine Palmer is a guy that I wrote up from, I believe, the Mattingly in the summer. One of those middle infielders that got on the mound with a really quick, athletic delivery and arm, and I like him as well. This is
from the high school of
Colt McCoy, Jim Ned. Every time I see Jim Ned, that's immediately the first thing I think of. But this is a really good group.
Yeah, and on top of that, 2 junior college guys that stick out a little bit. Rolando De La Cruz from Trinidad State in Colorado has a big arm, been up to 95, good slider, kid from the Dominican. And then Eric Martin, a big power hitting outfielder from Olney Central Junior College in Illinois, from Canada. So they're starting to pull some international guys out to Abilene. But you're right, Blaze Lambert and Craig Perry do a great job, and they're definitely a program on the rise. Had some success last year, and it looks like they're building off of it for the next couple of years of recruiting.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, you can kind of tell that they're knocking on that door to kind of be in that next tier in terms of the types of rosters they can build and the success they can have on the diamond and things like that. And it's one of those programs that I usually see a commitment on that list, or when I'm going to go watch games, and it always piques my interest, because of some of the guys that they've got previously. Moving down the list to DBU, a program that we've talked a lot about over previous podcasts, knocking on the door to Omaha, 1 win away from reaching the College World Series last season. We mentioned, they hired Cliff Pennington recently, and he's already making an impact there on the recruiting trail and with the infielders and things like that. A solid class, a class that stretches, around the U.S. They've definitely got some out-of-state flavor. They've got some JUCO flavor as well. I think that they're one of those programs that are definitely, they've been in this phase for a long, long time. They know what to look for. They know what they like, and they know what develops when they get there. And it's just kind of get to the point where it's not a rebuild for those guys. It's a reload. And I think this is another one of those types of classes.
Yeah. When I talked to Cliff Pennington, it was funny listening to him talk about the guys. They know what they want. And they're all very similar. They have a bunch of baseball junkies that love the game. And, their theory is that if you give us the right parts to work with and that same mindset and attitude, they're going to come in and fit in and do well in that program. And, like you said, they've got 5 high school kids, none of which are from Texas. I think we're going to see that change, like we're starting to see in that 2023 class.
Yep.
But then they've got 4 junior college kids as well. And they definitely have a profile type of kid they look for. It's been successful for them, and they're just going to keep building and continue that success that they saw last year and have for a while now.
Yeah, I think that they're probably on the verge of maybe becoming what Rice was, when guys like David Pierce and Taylor were there, to where you looked at what they did with their rosters and they had so many Houston guys, but they're able to go pluck guys from out of state and other areas because of what they were doing from a development standpoint. And I think that they've got a chance to turn into that in the Metroplex. Like you said, we're already seeing it with the 2023 class, with guys like Uriah Walters and Tryon jumping on board already, guys that are established, really good players in that 2023 class. And I just think that, they're going to become a destination, I think, for those guys in that area. And then what they've done with guys, putting guys into the pros, what they've done in the postseason and things like that, what they're doing from a facility standpoint, we could see them kind of become reminiscent of what Rice does when they really had it rolling, because Rice was just able to go get so many Houston guys and then go add and pick who they want from an out-of-state standpoint. And it just turned into this cycle to where they're having guys move on to the pros, just keep developing, keep acquiring talent. And they might be on the verge of doing that sort of thing.
No doubt. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, as they continue to rise. Rice is trying to get back to what it was.
Mm-hmm.
One of the schools we're going to talk about in a little bit, HBU, starting to get some guys that have some real talent too. So it's going to be interesting to see, how those recruiting classes start to affect each other. And are they starting to take some guys from a place like Baylor or, similar profile type of kid? It's just going to be interesting to watch over the next couple of years. But like we've said before, DBU is just on that upward path, and it's exciting to watch what they're going to be doing.
Yeah, it is. Moving down the list to Houston, I think you got to probably start with Ryan Dollar on that list, a guy that was named the most outstanding pitcher at area code. Big time strikeout stuff. I think that's a really fantastic get for Houston. And this is a program that it seems like every year they've got an arm that ends up being a guy that's heavily scouted, that gets drafted. And part of the reason why is they're getting guys like Ryan Dollar and Braden Cunningham and guys that have that upside on the mound with that strikeout stuff. Gabe Flores is a guy that I think can be a potential stand-up player for them down the road. Thomas Lissy as well. Zach Zavala, middle infielder from Georgetown. This is a solid group right here. And, I think that it's one of those classes to where you kind of see, this is kind of a typical Houston class where they got a couple arms you kind of nod your head at, say, these guys got a chance. And then you kind of look at what they do in the infield and the outfield with some athleticism and some guys that can run a little bit.
Yeah, well, like you said, Dollar's the prize recruit in this group. I mean, Braden Cunningham's got a chance to be really good too, but Dollar just been spitting out video game numbers for a while now, and a little bit of a high effort guy, but man, the stuff is really good. And I have a hard time imagining him not being in the rotation from day one.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. I mean, that type of stuff is going to be tough to keep off the mound for them, but kind of one of those next guys in those wave of arms at Houston as those next guys move on. We mentioned HBU. This is definitely a program on the rise with what they're doing down there recruiting. Dylan LaRue, a 5'55" guy, maybe the best catcher in the state of Texas. But Jarek Wells, to me, was a huge get for them. I thought he was one of the best pitchers at the Texas New Mexico Junior College All-Star Weekend. Big time sinker. I mean, it's a plus sinker. It's swing and miss. He was running the slider up there really hard in the low 80s, had a show to cutter as well. He looks like his brother, Kaysen Wells, who's a 5'55" member in the 2022 class. Athletic, a guy that can really move well. I'm sure he can run because we know Kaysen can run at a high level. That's a guy that's going to help them immediately. Doesn't matter the role. He's going to get in there. He's going to help them. And then a guy like Trent Baker as well, I think has got a chance to really go in there and make an instant impact with the bat and what he can do defensively in the outfield.
Yeah, a couple of things stuck out to me when I was going through their profiles. And first of all, shout out to the programs that really do a good job with their releases.
Yes.
It helps give some background info, and it makes it easier to find. But one of the things that stood out to me is they have 3 guys in this class that's dad played in the big leagues. So I'm imagining Lance Berkman's pitch to them resonated. I think the guys that have been in the big leagues understand that another guy in the big leagues who also obviously had as much success as Coach Berkman did, they know what it takes to play at that next level. So I found that interesting. I also thought it was interesting going through the bios, how many of them played football. There's a lot of them. So, I think they're looking for athletic kids that profile with some toughness. I know they got Baylor Bauman, who threw the semifinal game for Heath last year in the playoff run. The kid's a winner. He always has one. And that's a big get for a program like this. And, it's like we've seen, a kid like Dylan LaRue is a high profile kid that's one of the best catchers, if not the best catcher in Texas. And, as we've seen in that 23 group coming behind him, there's a couple more kind of high profile kids that chose to go there. So it's going to be fun to see what they do over the next couple of years, because they obviously prioritize athletic kids that, on paper should have some toughness. And, like you said, Jarek Wells, that's a huge get. I mean, I think he's going to end up hitting for them too, because his numbers in junior college last year were pretty good. So really good class, really interesting for Lance Berkman's, I guess, probably first real class. But it'll be exciting to watch them over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, Wells is the guy that like a ton of major programs wanted after the way he threw the ball at that All-Star weekend, and HBU was able to get him to join the mix. The football thing, the multi-sport thing, but like if I'm evaluating guys, or if I'm just trying to add to my recruiting class, like if I ever hear the word like son of a big leaguer, like it's like bells go off in my head, because
right.
We see now so many of those guys have success, whether it's at the college level, whether it's at the pro level. Like, I mean, it's just go look at the national, recruiting lists for guys in 2022. I mean, Andrew Jones's son is way up there. It's just like every year it's like, oh, another son of a big leaguer is really, really good, or breaking through at the big league level, or got drafted high, or whatever it is. Like that's usually like you got a chance, it just with the way you were brought up, being around the game, the genetics and everything like that. And it'll be curious to see if HBU is able to continuously capitalize on that because of the Lance Berkman connection, because he's a guy that did it at a really, really high level in the big leagues, and because it's in Houston too. It's not like you're going to the middle of nowhere to go play at this program. I mean, you're in the city of Houston, which always has to help as well. I think we can go through the Lamar list pretty quick, because it's just one guy. Gavin Green, right-hand pitcher from Baton Rouge Community College. As you noted, Drew, Lamar took a massive class last year. And, before we get to that, like you brought up a point, like I'm still stunned at the lack of media coverage that some of these programs put out. I'm not referring to Lamar. I'm referring to some of the big dogs that like don't even tweet anything, don't even have a release. I don't get that. Like if especially these programs that have arguably like top 5, top 10 recruiting classes nationally, there's nothing like besides the kid maybe tweeting out some edit that you send them or something like that. Like, I don't get it. So kudos to those programs that actually put in the work and are, willing and able, and I guess maybe unafraid to publish a list. Like, here's who signed with us. Like, these are the guys. Well, like, I don't get it. It's not really, it doesn't help the exposure of the sport at that level if some of the biggest and best programs aren't willing or able to promote the best players in the region and maybe the nation as well.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons for it. For one, a lot of programs haven't finished their signing class. So they're just maybe a little bit slower because the signing period hasn't ended yet. So that can contribute to it sometimes. Another thing that can go into it is a lot of times these schools, their SIDs and the people or person that would be responsible for it are have other duties with other sports. So they may just not have a chance to get it out right away as quickly as some others do. But you're right. Like, I think there's a lot of excitement that comes with signing day, and it's nice to see the people that do put in the work. And which kind of takes us to our next school, a school that has been down, has a new coach, and has really seemingly made an effort to really promote their program on social media, which is Rice. I think I've seen more stuff about Rice in the first month or so that this group was hired on social media than I had in years added up.
Yeah.
So, it's smart. Like, some of the stuff that places do is better quality than others. But just getting stuff out there about your program, it's easy, free recruiting and marketing is really what it is. And, I know Coulter Bostic, the new pitching coach at Rice, has done a really good job with that. I mean, he's on social media. He looks like he just on a tour of Rice every day, walking around campus and, taking pictures, because, not everyone has a chance, especially with COVID and travel and all that. A lot of kids haven't been able to get out there and really check out campuses and go through a normal recruiting process. So it's helpful. It's like you said, it's a marketing tool for your program. And, kudos to the guys that understand that and really do a good job of it. And it's like you said, it's not just the big schools that have the resources that are doing it. There's some smaller schools that are, have coaches that are very progressive and seem to, really promote the success and the excitement of their program. And it sticks out when you're going through a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, it does stick out, and it sticks out to the players too. I mean, they notice, like you said about Rice. Yeah, I've seen more from them than I saw the previous 3 years combined. Just in terms of program promotion and what's going on there. Like, I feel like I actually know what's going on at Rice now, and I think it's starting to resonate some with kids as well. And you look at their list of their signing class, and probably my favorite guy from that list is Christian Salazar. I saw him in the summer. He actually had a really good Houston College Championships event that we put on down at Houston and Rice and Sam Houston State and Texas A&M. Actually hit a homer at Rice, and it ended up being a Rice commitment like a week later. Yeah. I saw him again this fall, and I think he's probably going to be a guy that we've got to put in the 55 next time we update it. I get some Kiki Hernandez vibes from him, similar build, kind of that's short but strong, athletic build. Can play second base, can play outfield, really tracked the ball well in center field when I saw him. He's got some impact with the bat. I mean, this guy just hammered line drives and hit an absolute bomb down at Premier, and just carries himself very much like a confident, under control, slow heartbeat baseball player. And I would be surprised if he's not a guy that emerges as a early impact guy and probably a leader in that program as well. But, Trey Duffield, an outfielder from straight Jesuit, was an area code guy. They've got some quality guys on this list. And I think that, with what they're doing recruiting wise, the new staff and how they're promoting and things like that, I think they're going to be able to get back to being, at least a noticeable recruiting presence in the city of Houston, because we know how talented Houston is. Mm-hmm. If you just get 5, 6, 7 guys from Houston every cycle, you can build a good roster in college baseball. And I think that's what Rice needs to get back to doing. And I think that's kind of what they're doing right now. Maybe stretching out a little bit as we typically see from some of these private schools, getting a couple out-of-state guys here or there that can fit what they do academically and money-wise.
Yeah, well, I mean, kudos to Coach Cruz in this first class and this first couple months on the job, because they're obviously putting emphasis on some stuff that had not been prioritized with the last staff. And that's not necessarily a knock on the last staff, but when you look at the blueprint and the profile of where these kids are from, it reminded me a lot of those early Rice classes, like you talked about, that Coach Pierce and Coach Taylor constructed. You see a majority of Houston kids, a handful of cherry picked out of state kids, and a couple of junior college guys. So getting back a little bit into that junior college mix for them, a couple of physical pitchers that are going to have a chance to contribute early. And it's fun to see a program like that had so much going for it for such a long time, seemingly back on that right path. And like Kendall mentioned when he was on last week, he thinks that Jose Cruz definitely has a good feel for what went wrong and what needed to be addressed. And, based on some of the stuff that we've seen, I'd have to agree with that. It looks like they're targeting more physical kids, really putting some emphasis on the technology on the pitching side. So it's exciting to see them, heading back in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like Kendall said too, I admit I was a little skeptical when that hire was made, because I think that it's such a stark difference when you go from the pro level to the college level in terms of recruiting, and especially at a program like Rice, where you have that really uniquely high academic standard, but there's also some things you can do with the scholarship money to your advantage, right, to where you're able to get maybe some more scholarship money and things like that. But just what they've done in the immediate time that staff's been hired, you mentioned the physicality, athleticism, the development side, like they clearly got in there and did a quick audit and said, hey, we've got to get a lot better in these areas. And it's good to see that, because that's exactly the type of stuff that they needed to do.
Right. Well, I think it helped having Paul Yanish there too. He'd gotten to be in the program and see what was going on. And he obviously understands Rice, having played there, and cares about the school. And, when you get at least one or two guys that are part of the staff that, played there and have a school really mean something to them, that counts for something. And I know Paul loves Rice, and he's done a really good job, and saw him out a lot this summer. And, collectively that group put together a good class. So it is neat to see. Yeah.
He's definitely a guy I bumped into a few times, grinding out at our events this summer. The SFA list, just 2 players. I think we can probably chop that up into probably still got some guys on that roster from a holdover because of the COVID stuff. Sam Houston State.
Yeah. Well, hey, real quick, going back.
What is SFA, is there a Rockwall guy we got to talk about?
No, but he does share a lake with us from Rowlett, Brock Nort. I saw him multiple times. He plays for the Patriots. Really good little player, man. He barrels up balls on just every at bat. Can play a bunch of different infield positions. So, he's a good little player, and I think he's going to have a good college career.
You said share a lake. Like, is that like a common phrase up there? Like the people talk about how they share lakes?
Well, I mean, they're on.
Aren't you guys rivals?
I mean, it's a little bit one-sided, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I mean,
okay.
I mean, home of Brandon Loy.
That's right. Yeah.
Rowlett and our former guest Kyle Cheeseborough, coach at Mississippi State, played at Rowlett too. So they're known from having a good baseball program. And I think Brock's when Brock fills out too, he might really hit for some power, but really good little baseball player. Like watching him play, plays hard, does a good job for that Dallas Patriots team. So a good get for SFA.
Sam Houston State, talking about guys that play hard. They have a type. They go out and get it. I think Carson Courtney is a good example of that. Trey Ackerman is a good example of that, like guys that you watch them play and how they compete and things like that. I think that probably the crown jewel of this class is Joseph Redfield. Got a chance to see him at that All-Star weekend. He was definitely in the conversation as one of the best position players at that event. Athletic, can run. I think if you're Sam Houston State, just hope the power doesn't come on, because that could be something that gets him selected. And root for that draft not to expand as well, because if he gets to campus, he's going to be an immediate impact guy and probably at the top of the lineup as well. But Noah O'Farrell, a guy that I think's got some projection and some upside on the mound, really liked him as well. I like how Sam Houston State operates, because they're able to kind of wait back a little bit. They're not having to take the 23s and 24s and 25s like some of these other programs do. And they're really able to get out and evaluate. And they really have a type of guy that they like that, I think they kind of steer towards infielders that can kind of play all over the place and profile different ways. And they know what they like on the mound as well. So another solid signing class for those guys, a good mix of both high school guys, especially in the state of Texas. And then you get a couple of guys from Temple Junior College as well that can come in and play right away for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely have a type, and they're a tough team. And going back to Coach Pierce being there, I mean, I'm not super familiar with what they were before that, but he definitely brought a toughness to that place. And then it carried on with the Matt Deggs era. And like you said, Coach Sirianni's just continued that. And they do a really good job of finding kids, really evaluating what they're looking for and finding those guys and plugging them in, because it's one of those programs that you feel like they're a similar team just about every year that you play them. But you're going to get a dogfight when those guys come in, and they have a tough group, and that's kind of the profile that they look for seemingly. So, another class like that, Caleb Cotton's a really good athletic outfielder from Huntsville. So he's going to have a chance to be a really good player for those guys too.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention Ryan Franden, who I believe was coming off of a broken leg and then got back into the mix late in the summer. Saw him hit and I was like, yeah, that's a bat that can play. And sure enough, Sam Houston State jumped right in there and got him. I believe he played at Sam Houston State at one of our 5-tool events. A left-handed bat that I think has got a chance to profile as a guy that can really help them sooner than later down the road. But Sam Houston State, they like you said, they know what they're doing. They always compete. They're always tough. And I think this class kind of just helps them keep that going. Texas A&M Corpus Christi, 5-man signing class, 4 high school guys and a JUCO guy as well. This is a staff shout out to them because I saw them so much at 5-tool events. They really get out and try to see a bunch of guys. And, over the years too, they've had a couple guys get drafted out of there. It seems like it's not really a surprise if they have a draft guy each cycle, especially in the arm side as well. So 5-man class from them, steering more towards the high school level, but dipping into those JUCO ranks as well.
Yeah, I know Coach Malone does a really good job with those guys. Like you said, he's always out, very invested, very active head coach. Always like dealing with him when we were playing him at Texas. We always like going down and playing that Hooks ballpark. They packed that place. When we've been down there every time. And so I hope to see them continue to have some success. And like you said, I think the world of that staff, they work really hard.
Yeah, they do. Texas State, I think that you probably got to start Chase Moore on this list, 5-tool 55 guy, a true two-way talent. I think that he's probably going to get every opportunity to be a starting shortstop right away. I know when we had Josh on the podcast, he mentioned how old they are in the middle infield, with how many seniors they have in there. And I think Chase Moore, with his skill and his talent level, I think he's got a chance to go in there and compete to be a starter immediately. He's really interesting on the mound too. I don't think it's ever going to be a starting arm, but it's going to be tempting to use that guy in a relief role just because he's low 90s and it's easy and it's a really quick arm. I think he was 96 or 97 miles an hour across the infield down at HP Scout Day. And, when I've seen him this fall, there's been some more impact in the bat in terms of generating some lift and driving the baseball out of the yard with his bat speed and things like that. So he's probably the crown jewel of that group. Brian Pennington, a guy I really like. I saw him a few times. Probably some of the best control and command in the 2022 class. I mean, it's a surprise when he walks guys. He can throw 4 pitches for a strike, really competes well, executes his stuff. Not going to light up the radar gun, but I guarantee you that's a guy that when he gets on campus, he's going to throw for them right away, whatever role it's in, because he can throw strikes and he can execute his pitches as well. But, a lot of two-sport guys on here as well. Like, I know we've looked at Rashawn Galloway's highlights in football and, just what kind of athlete he is. And, I think he really fits that mold of the type of thing that TCU looks for. But yeah, some two-sport guys in here, a couple of JUCO guys as well. I think this is a really solid class.
Yeah, they did a really good job of finding a good mix of players to fill some holes that they're going to have at the end of this year. Like you said, quite a few two sport guys. One thing I've never seen before, going back to Pennington, is apparently he was a good basketball player, but also participates in the marching band as a drum major. So I thought that was kind of cool. But so I'm guessing he has some rhythm on the mound. But
wow. Wow. There's some
that's
rhythm
an
to that
obvious
joke, rhythm to that delivery, huh?
yeah. Well, it just turned out that way. But like you said, Rashawn Galloway, I'm excited to see that kid. Man, he's got some tools, and he's got some leadership qualities as being a quarterback, and makes sense that he's going to be back behind the plate, but really good arm, has some power in the bat, and moves well for his size. And going back, this was another class and another school that did a really good job with their signing day coverage. Thought they had some cool ideas, and I like the little clips that they've been producing of some of the players explaining why they picked Texas State. So
yeah,
really doing a good job of kind of highlighting some strengths of their program. And I mean, that's the kind of stuff that kids and parents want to see. They're scrolling through Twitter, not every kid chooses a place for the same reason. So it's interesting to hear why some of the kids chose a place. But again, just a good job that they did getting information out, and obviously a really good job with the class too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It was really cool to see. I mean, letting these guys kind of explain in their own words, hey, this is why I picked Texas State. And it's good FaceTime and good practice for those guys as well. Like, this is probably another topic for another podcast, but the whole NIL world and things like that, like, letting these guys kind of show their personality a little bit, show their faces a little bit, connect with the fan base in that sort of way. I think that was really cool to see that. That's the only program I saw doing that from that sort of standpoint, kind of letting those guys control, like, hey, take out your phone, like tell the fan base like why you chose Texas State. And one of the most impactful things in recruiting when these guys go on visits is when families and players on visits talk to the current players and that sort of thing. So I got to look back through my notes. I want to say Mark Zapata might have been a Dodgers scout team guy. I can't recall specifically, but that name rings a bell as a lefty that was like really trending up and has some upside on the mound. But yeah, those guys do a good job. They're always out grinding, always out recruiting. I think they always do a pretty good job of getting a mix of high school guys from the state of Texas, but also those junior college guys as well.
No doubt. They're definitely heading in the right direction. And they put together a class that looks like it just makes sense on paper.
Yeah.
With what they're standing to lose and the type of athletes that they're going to be bringing into the program.
Yeah. Going down to UTA, 3 signees on their list. That's, the result of a lot of holdovers from the roster expansion and things like that. But they definitely got quality with these 3 guys, because I've seen 2 of them in person, Ryan Black, middle infielder, and then Ryan Rodriguez, a lefty. A lot of Rodriguez, to me, I think that he's got the ability to be a strike thrower from the left side, can really sink it well, a lot of weak contact, I think. And then Ryan Black, I know we both saw him playing for that Blue Jay scout team, hitting at the top of their order in the fall, playing second base at a high level. He's athletic. He can run a little bit. I think the bat is going to play. That's the type of guy that looks like an early impact kind of guy for them, that can profile down the road as a top of the order kind of hitter that sets the tone for that lineup.
Yeah, and then the third guy in the class, I haven't seen him play, but definitely adding him to our all-name team, Cade McGlade.
Great.
That's
name.
A big league name. That's a big
great
league
name. Yeah, that's that sounds like kind of sounds like a football name, or I don't know, like Cade McGlade. Like Cade McGlade and Cutter Coffee, I think, are the 2 names so far on these lists, are like top of the all-name league, all-name team. And maybe this guy as well, going down to UTRGV, Vigo Lopez. That sounds like a guy that can hit and run. Like you gotta be able to move a little bit if your name's Vigo. It just sounds like you can run. But yeah. UTRGV, let me count it up here. 8 signees in that group. I think that they really do a good job of hitting their home base well. Yep. And we know the type of baseball down there. There's some really good baseball down there in the valley and those surrounding areas. And it kind of, I nod my head because you should be trying to capitalize on that area. And that's something that they're doing with this signing class.
No doubt. And I'm really excited to see. So I looking at the schedule for this year, Texas is going down to play in their ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is a program that was nationally known for a long time back when they were UT Pan Am and with Coach Ogletree and Skip Johnson as an alum there. But yeah, like you said, really good job hitting that home base. And, you know, it's going to create some excitement for the kids in the area. And Lopez is a good athlete, really good football receiver. And, you know, I know that having played them, Coach Matlock has done a really good job with that program, and, you know, really made a point to have a more physical, more athletic team. And it's starting to show up in their results.
Yeah. I wonder if it's going to become an increasing trend of programs like Texas going to play places like this. And I think it's super cool because it's going to raise the profile of those programs they go play. It's a really unique opportunity for those fan bases on both sides. I mean, there's a lot of Texas fans down there in the Valley as well. They're going to get out and go to that game. And, you know, listening to what, you know, David Pierce said about scheduling those types of games, like it creates a tough environment to play in. Like you said, that place is going to be packed. Like when Texas goes down to Corpus to play, it's packed. When Texas goes to Texas State to play, it's packed. Like, and those are tough environments to play in. Like, and it's a pretty good way to kind of test what your team's got from a mental standpoint and kind of give them, you know, more reps in that type of environment. Because if you have to go on the road in the postseason, you're going to be playing in a bunch of those environments. So I hope that's something that kind of catches on. I know the whole RPI thing. And I know like, hey, like you don't want to go down there and drop a midweek game, but in the grand scheme of things, like midweek games don't matter that much for your resume. It's really determined by what you do in those weekend series. So kudos to Texas for scheduling that game. I hope it's something that kind of other big programs in the state of Texas start to do a little bit more, because not only could it boost the profiles of those other programs in the state, but it's just such a cool college baseball environment.
It is. Yeah. Like you said, I loved going to Corpus when we played down there. We got to a point where we were playing down there every year. You know, the ballpark's good, the atmosphere's good, the scenery's good. It's really fun. And, you know, same with going down to Texas State. People always ask us why we go down there when they could just come right up the road. It's like, well, I mean, shoot, you know, playing in San Marcos is a more hostile environment than more than half of the places in the Big 12.
It is.
And it's, you know, you can just feel the emotion, feel the buzz in the crowd. And, you know, it makes those midweek games have a little bit more meaning and, you know, gives it something to play for. So, you know, going down there, it's great, you know, with a bigger school that has fans throughout the state. It's a great opportunity for those local people to get out and see a Texas play, an A&M play, a Tech play, you know, just because they don't always get a chance to get out of town and go to those weekend games. So, you know, I love it from that angle. I would almost bet that game is sold out. It may already be sold out, but, you know, I think they'll put on a good show, and I think it'll be a fun environment for everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Moving down the list to our final team on here, UTSA. Preston Freeman, 5'12", 55 guy I saw in the summer. Really like. He's also a two-sport guy. He's a standout receiver as well for that football team. Just watching the way the hands work defensively, the hands work in the batter's box, the athleticism. He definitely has some physical projection left as well. I think that's a really fantastic get for them. And then Clark Henry, outfielder from Temple Junior College, is a guy that profiles is probably an immediate impact guy for them with the bat and the outfield. You know, these guys do a good job recruiting the state of Texas and recruiting their area. And we've talked about Central Texas, and we've talked about San Antonio and how these are areas on the rise. But this is a staff, you know, I think that what his name escapes me. What's the head coach's name?
Patrick Hallmark.
Yeah, Hallmark. I kept wanting to say Holbrook for some reason. I remember when Texas went to go play, when he was in Incarnate Ward, like that team was good. Like they were good. They had talent. They competed their tails off, and they really flat took it to Texas. And sure enough, that program got a lot better really, really quickly. And we're already seeing that happen in UTSA as well. And I really think that they're going to become maybe not a force in the state of Texas, but I bet you they're competing for a postseason opportunities more consistently than they are not. And
But
what they did, that staff did at Incarnate Word, and the talent they're getting to UTSA, they're definitely on the rise for sure.
yeah, Coach Hallmark is obviously known as a tough, hard-nosed coach, and you see that in his program. The players play hard. They had a couple of guys that transferred out, as grad transfers a couple of years ago and had success at some big programs. And, we had one at Texas with the pitcher with Palmer Wenzel, but there's definitely a toughness in the program that he expects. And I know Ryan Aguayo does a great job out on the road. He's another one of those guys that you see out all the time. Really hustles and does a good job. And you're looking at this high schools that their kids are coming from. They have some winning programs that these kids are coming from, with Veterans Memorial, Elkins. So it's they have a type, just like a lot of these schools do. And you're going to be in for a dogfight when you play those guys.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm curious to see too. Obviously the football program being on the rise and being in the national spotlight right now, what kind of effect that might have on their baseball recruiting. Everyone knows the big uptick that people get when you see some football success to a university as a whole. And that spreads a lot of time throughout the athletic department. Just kind of, it's that free marketing that you can take advantage of. And it's like, hey, you can really win big at this place. And I think Coach Hallmark has them headed in the right direction. And like you said, the way that Ryan Aguayo is out on the road so much and really hustling and doing his homework, I think they're heading in the right direction, like we said.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the football program. Like, when they bring guys on campus for visits now, like, that's, when you start comparing, UTSA to some of those non-Power 5 programs and what they can offer with a campus, a city, and a visit type environment, like, that's got to be a boost for them. Like, come to a sold out Alamo Dome, which, by the way, like, that's a really uniquely awesome football environment. It gets loud. Like,
yeah, no
I don't
doubt.
know if it's because of the stadium design or the acoustics or whatever, but it gets really, really loud in there. And it's a fun, energetic environment to watch a football game. And like, they've got that in their back pocket to use now as well. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all if they were able to kind of capitalize on that momentum with what's going on there, because I mean, it, when the football team's good, it just raises everybody's interest in every other program on campus. There's going to be more people that want to go to a baseball game. There's going to be more people that just want to be involved and pay attention to what's going on athletically at that program. So yeah, it's I think that's definitely a program to watch, especially with that surrounding talent in the San Antonio area. I'm excited to go out and watch some high school games this season because of how much talent's there. But well, that takes us through I believe all the D1 programs in this region, in the state of Texas. Any final thoughts as we kind of, go over, almost, I think, like 10, 12, 15 programs the last couple of podcasts.
Yeah. I mean, like we say pretty frequently, there's so much good talent in this state, and there's a lot of options of places that you can go to. And a lot of these programs that we just mentioned do a really, really good job across the board, whether it's on the field, off the field. It's, like you said, do your homework and figure out what some of these places are about, because I think you might be surprised, based on just normal perception when you see some of these schools. But these are teams that have capabilities and have a history of making postseason noise. And, I don't see many of them on there that aren't heading in an upward trend too. So, a lot of really good coaches, a lot of really good recruiting coordinators that work really hard, that put together these staffs. And, going back to some of the social media stuff, shout out to all the people that work on that, because it's a group collective effort, and you have to be really organized to put a lot of that together. If you're some of those schools that get the pictures, the kids in the uniforms, that's not always easy to do. It might seem easy, but coordinating all that, getting them in the same uniforms, finding times to do it on visits, if you can get the whole group together on the same visit, that's something neat that I've seen some programs do. But there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and you have to be really intentional with your planning. And the groups that do a good job of it, a lot of times it kind of shows up in the way they do other things as well. So Shout out to a lot of those programs that take the time and really are intentional with their recruiting efforts, via social media and just getting stuff out, because fans want to see that, kids want to see that. And if you really take some time to do it, it can go a long way for your program.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's not easy to do that. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of effort. And like you said, organization as well. And let me tell you, like, it's not easy to find high school baseball stats all the time. Like it's tough to find those and find accurate ones as well. So yeah, definitely a big shout out to all those people behind the scenes that really did a fantastic job and making that day a little bit more special for those players. But also too, like there's going to be fans of fan bases that like they're Googling signing class and they want to know like, hey, I want to see who's coming up. Maybe it's now, maybe it's 6 months from now. But they're going to want to know like, hey, who's next coming through here that I can get excited about. So definitely the hard work going into there. But well, I know you got to get to a luncheon with the little man. I hope they have some good food. I like, is there going to be eating involved?
10:30 luncheon.
Yeah. So 10:30 luncheon. Like maybe you should call it a brunchin instead of a luncheon, but yeah, you like that one? It's almost as good as your rhythm one on the mound with the drum major, which I do appreciate that you found that tidbit. Because I did not know it previously. And now I'm going to wonder if we're ever going to have another drum major that we talk about in these signing classes.
Well, if the schools will put it in their release, we'll find out.
Yeah, there we go. Who knows? There might be another drum major on this list and we just don't know it because there wasn't a release out for that program. But all right, we'll get off of here. Thank you for listening to episode 21 of the 5-Tool Baseball Podcast. Again, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're all over the place. So hit one of those follow buttons, hit one of those like buttons, subscribe buttons, whatever it is. We try to make it super easy for you to find us and leave us a nice review and feedback if you don't mind. It really helps us kind of get to into more ears of more baseball fans in the state of Texas and surrounding areas. So until we talk to y'all next time, have a good week, have a good weekend, and take care.